Again, thank you very much for joining me. I have obviously done plenty of research. Owner of Jim's Group, and probably more famously Jim's Mowing. Is that the most known brand, or?
Well, it's still the biggest, but not by a huge margin. We've got about 2,200 for mowing, but cleaning's close on 2,000. So it's becoming
Yeah,
more than just mowing.
it's getting bigger.
Yeah,
I went through the some history, which intrigued me a lot. So 1982, you started mowing part time whilst you were completing your PhD
actually, I
with
started
a
in 1970 doing a gardening business before I started in my studies. Did it
wow,
part-time until 1982. 1982 is when I flunked out of my academic career and started doing it full-time. Yeah.
right.
So
How
it's
old
since
were
I've been
you? How old were you in 1970? If you don't mind me asking,
how old, what, sorry?
how old were you in 1970?
18.
18. So you straight out of school into gardening.
No, straight out of school, I went to work on a farm for 6 months. And I tried a few things, including selling encyclopedias door to door, which I was a failure at. Six
Yeah.
months in the public service. But in that year, I put a notice in the window of the local hardware store offering to do gardening
Right.
work. And I got a few jobs out of that. That was
Right.
just part-time continuous. And I just kept that on right through my university career.
Yes. So 1982 is when the business started. The
As a full-time
full-time
thing, yeah.
job.
That's right.
Yep. In between 82 to 89, 1989 is when Jim's Mowing commenced under a franchise model.
That's correct, yeah.
Franchises back then were, but was there many around at all? Or was it really a thing?
Well, the first one was VIP. That started in Adelaide
Yes.
a little bit earlier, sometime during that time, and they came to Melbourne in about 1987. And that's in a sense
Right.
what pushed me to launch a franchise, because almost in self-defense, because they were pretty. I was a very small business. I used to build up and sell lawn mowing rounds, very running it from flat next to my house, very, very primitive business. And I thought these guys would crush me if I didn't do something. So I decided to. I might have tried to join them actually. I rang them up the state manager and offered to help build VIP. And when he said no,
Right.
I decided to have a go myself.
Great. That's very fair. Well, wise decision in hindsight.
Yeah, with that much idea that it would be so successful. Somebody asked me at the beginning how many franchisees I might have one day, and I said, look, if it goes well, maybe 100. I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. During from 1990 to the 2000s, you added multiple divisions, built training centers and support systems around, I guess, the Jim's group. How did you how did you decide on what divisions and whatnot to create? Was there some sort of process for that to occur?
Well, a lot less systematic than you might think. What happened is I decided to try using my franchise business for cleaning, model for cleaning, but I didn't think the Jim's mowing brand, the guy with the beard and the hat, which is me, of course, would look much good for gardening. So what I did was I had a different logo called Sunlight. So I thought that'd be more of a cleaning type of thing. And I tried that, sold a couple of franchises, couldn't find them the work, gave them the money back, walked away. And then somebody came to me and said, what about Jim's cleaning? So I said to him, well, that's obviously not a very good idea because Jim's is obviously a mowing brand. It's the guy with the beard and the hat. Looks like a gardener. How could you give
Yeah.
it to a woman who's going to clean a house? And he said, I think it'll work. And I said, no, it won't. No, not a chance. So he persuaded me eventually to let him give it a go in a sort of a partnership arrangement, and it worked. The actual brand, because it was well known for mowing, actually extended to cleaning. I was surprised about that. So we started a
Yes.
few divisions like handyman, trees, car detailing, and I think dog wash at that time, just in a very small way. Just tried to do it internally.
Yeah.
Didn't do particularly well in any of them actually. It's only later when we started finding what we call divisional franchisors to take over the division and run it themselves that it started to work a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah. From 2000 until I guess more recently, clearly the growth and whatnot has been phenomenal. But in 2017, you established the Institute for Social Neuroscience to fund research. Something more meaningful behind that you went down that route?
The whole purpose of my business was to pursue my academic interests. I did a PhD back in the 70s, early 80s, looking at the reason for the rise and fall of civilization, came to the conclusion that what was behind it was biology more than anything abstract like economics. And I wanted to continue that, but not having even a PhD at that stage and not having any academic possibility of a career, I felt the only way to actually achieve that would be make some money so I could fund my own research institute. So that's what I did. Because basically the stuff I wanted to do was all to do with hormones and genes and rats and so forth. And
Mm-hmm.
so after I started making a bit of money, I approached a lecturer at La Trobe University, Tony Paolini, to start doing some research, very small scale, like $250,000 a year, that kind of stuff. And then
Yeah.
as part of that, we decided to try and launch this institute as a way of giving some backing to it, like having an institute which could also have a research arm. Now
Yeah.
that didn't work out particularly well. So eventually, I basically gave him the gave him ISN
Yeah.
and continued the research as a separate project.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. That makes sense. And then into the 2020s, I'm sure this was a process since 1982, but have reached over 5,000 franchisees and around $1 billion in turnover, have
Yeah,
extended.
we're about 5,700 now, I think.
Right.
And I would reckon the turnover is probably like $1 billion. But I mean, it makes it
Yeah.
sound like a lot, Darcy, like $1 billion turnover. But I only get about 1% of that, so it's not as lucrative as you might think. I'm a lot more famous than I'm
Yes.
rich.
Well, yeah, the brand certainly speaks for itself. And I'm going to dive into this a little bit more. I just wanted to sort of summarize the history as well. But you've also expanded out to New Zealand, the UK, and Canada,
Yeah,
as well
Canada's
as
a
Australia.
bit of a damp squib. We've only got a dozen guys there, and they're basically running themselves. We've got about 90 in Canada, but we're strong
Okay.
in Australia and New Zealand. That's our main
Yeah.
market.
Yeah. Did you ever complete your PhD, or is that still a?
Oh no, I got it. I got it.
Okay.
I took some time off
Yeah.
from my studies in the 80s and from my work in the 80s and finished it, and they granted it to me. I'm officially Dr. Penman if you want to use it.
Okay. No,
I don't outside the academic environment. We've got about 20 different articles in different, mostly hormones and behavior, that kind of stuff, those kind of magazines. So there's been quite a lot of stuff done. If you actually go and
yeah.
look up mild food restriction effects on rats, you'll find a lot of our studies are in there.
Okay. I'm sure to have a look. I am in the health. I've studied in the health industry myself, so
Yeah.
I'll be sure to have a look. Um, I guess the premise of this podcast, you're my first guest, so again, thank you for coming on. But it's called the Boring Business Oz podcast, and I say that with absolute respect.
Well, it's a boring
To
subject. It's not like some high-level technology exciting thing that's going to, go viral and take over the internet. It's the
No,
boring business of getting lawns mowed and houses clean. I personally find it very interesting. It's a very fun, it's a very fun industry. But I
yeah,
can understand to outsiders, it doesn't have the sexiness of running a lot of other things.
exactly. Well, that's sort of that is the premise of the podcast, and I intend to. I have interviews lined up with people who run these boring businesses, because I have the philosophy that these businesses actually that people tend to be drawn away, or might be because they're not seen as sexy, that they might be drawn away to do other things and work in maybe tech or other fields like that. But there actually is um, there's a real need for this, and it can be quite lucrative to have your own business in these little businesses if you do it well. And I'm
Yeah.
keen to understand how people do it well, and yeah, that's really it. So
Well, it's like the
um,
Berkshire Hathaway idea, Warren Buffett. invest in boring everyday businesses nothing particularly about candies like See's candies or insurance or simple things. He invests in
Yeah.
Coke. I mean nothing fabulous. And he's actually famously averse to technology companies. But it's to
Yes.
me, the boring stuff is where the opportunities are. The sexier the business, the more the competition. If you want to be a YouTube influencer, for example, or be a famous film star or something like that, that's really hard because everybody wants to do that. But who wants to go out and mow lawns? I mean, we do, and it's a good job, but it's not considered to be sexy.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I've also looked at the another fascinating area for me is there's a lot of talk around lots of businesses that will be sold in maybe the next 10, 20 years or even today, and really the younger generation not necessarily wanting to take over those businesses, and that really quite successful businesses out there that can be, when you look at it from a dollar return point of view, would be quite a good investment if you're able to run it properly and they're not sexy.
Yeah, you're right too. People have wrong ideas. Even within franchising, people find things like cafes and so forth a lot more sexy than the service business. So we have people who
Mm,
spend $500,000 to buy a Gloria Jean's Cafe. You think, oh, that's a food related thing. It's all to do with hospitality and stuff. It sounds pretty good. But the reality, they end up working incredibly ridiculous hours for very little return. And it's actually,
yes.
from our experience, people who've done that kind of thing, they actually make less money than somebody just doing the most basic thing where they're only investing in $30,000. Because it's just
Yeah.
people avoid things where you got to do physical work. I
Yes.
personally enjoy it. I love mowing lawns. Even at the weekend now, I'll go out chopping wood and gardening and planting trees and stuff. To me, that's fun work. But most people would rather sit at the computer and play around with a mouse and you know, it's
Yes.
the modern world
No,
for
that
you. Very
it is.
foolish.
That's certainly what it is. It's certainly. I do definitely agree. That's certainly the sort of the thought of a lot of people. I did read about this. And it interests me. The question is around why did you go down the franchising route as opposed to creating a mowing behemoth with lots and lots of employees? Are you able to dive into that sort of why the franchise model of interest to you?
Well, it's very difficult to employ people to do good jobs. Don't forget, it's very little supervision in this sort of thing. You're saying that somebody's going to mow lawns by themselves. The average job's about $80 these days. They've got to travel, they've got to get there. Supervising someone is very, very, very difficult. Now, we have franchisees who turn over, sometimes multiple millions of dollars, but they're a very rare animal. So to be able to do that and give great service while not being able to directly supervise is very difficult. If you're running like a factory or somewhere where everybody's under the same roof, you can look at them. But how do you run a mowing or a cleaning business like that? So it's
Mm,
extremely difficult to find good people. And if you do find a good person, they're doing all the work for you and you're getting a big chunk of the money. They think, well, why wouldn't I do it myself? So once they
yeah,
know how, it's because there's virtually no capital to start off with. So it actually
yeah.
suits service industries like ours very, very well.
I did read the obviously there's a financial investment for them to become a franchise, to own a franchise, but they actually have skin in the game, and that it means there's an interest in them actually performing and acting in a way that gives them more business,
Yeah.
which
Well,
I thought was a good point.
we don't always charge for franchises. There's some divisions like trees, for example, energy that don't. But generally speaking, the reason charging for a franchise means two things. First of all, as you say, it's a index that they're serious about it. But secondly, we have a thing called pay for work guarantee, which means if a franchise is not making whatever amount of money, could be anything from $1,000 to $2,500 per week, they can go and do free services, and we pay them. Or in some divisions, they can actually do promotional work. So
Right.
anyone's got pretty well guaranteed, as long as you're prepared to do this from the beginning, you'll make that minimum amount of money. Now, if you're starting in business, that's pretty important. We are pretty good at finding work. A lot of franchises just start off flat out and they continue that way. But if not, they've got this, means they can pay their rent and their mortgage. Now, we don't like to have businesses sold without pay for work guarantee because the failure rate's too high.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
not only does it give you an income, but doing freebies actually gets you more work because you get ongoing regulars, you get referrals, you can do upselling, you're still in the street. It actually tends to promote the business very, very effectively. Because what we don't want to do is have somebody fail. Like you go into
Yeah.
business like cleaning or gardening from scratch as an independent, full time, your chance of being in business after 12 months is around about between 5 and 10%. This is common statistics. You can see it on the internet. With us,
Yeah.
it's around 88%. Not zero.
Right.
It's not 100%. People do leave in the first year, but the great majority that start with us will be there in 12 months' time. And very great, more than 90% will report good or satisfactory income when we poll them in our surveys.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. I think definitely well, once I read that and obviously hearing you now, the sometimes the franchisee model may get a bad rap for someone the franchisor taking a lot of the money, but when they actually have that amount of support and also I guess the backing of you guys and the training and whatnot, it really does make sense. And they've got their own money on the line.
There are some absolutely terrible systems around, Darcy. Have you heard about what the 7-Eleven is doing to people? They pay $1 million for a business. It comes to the end of 12 months. They thank you, hand over the keys, and walk away. We'll just take it back and run it an in-house thing. That's just animal. I think
Yeah.
it's obscene that they're allowed to do such a thing, that the government doesn't
Yeah.
step in and protect them.
Mm.
So there are some pretty terrible franchisors around. But yeah, our fees are pretty modest. I mean, everybody complains about them, but we only on average charge about 6% of turnover. So it's
Yeah.
typical
Yeah.
franchise, you might pay 10 grand a year in fees. And
Yeah.
the average turnover is about $150,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you the first franchisees? How did you go about finding them, convincing them? Maybe the convincing wasn't so hard, but yeah, I guess how did you transition into that franchisee model, and how
Okay.
was it
I
getting
had
the
I had a business building up and selling lawn mowing rounds. That was just the thing. You come to me, I'll give you a certain amount of money and I'll give you some regular customers. That's how I began. When I
yeah
decided to franchise, I went to some of these people and actually talked to them about the contract. I said, what kind of contract would appeal to you? And then some of my best of my subbies and the people who bought lawn mowing rounds from me in the past that had been good, I said, all right, you can have a franchise. The subbies were offered to buy at a very modest price. The others were just granted them because they already had regular customers. So I kind of had, about a dozen franchisees to start with. And there were people who were
gotcha
approaching me about buying lawn mowing rounds because I had a reputation. I used to look after people very well. I used to replace their clients and give them support and training and stuff. So I had a pretty good reputation. And when I wanted to sell lawn mowing rounds, what I would do, I had a list of all the on the blackboard behind me, I had these little white cards with a name and phone number of the people who bought lawn mowing grounds off me. And if somebody would say to me, well, why would I buy from you? And I said, well, why don't you ask these guys? So they'd pick out, there's about 100 on the board eventually, pick out some of them. They'd ring them. What's Jim like to deal with? They say, Jim is, he's good. Does what he says he does. He replaces clients. He's always willing to give you advice and stuff. So this is people who bought lawn mowing grounds from me. So what I then did is I applied the same policy, but instead of a board, I had a list of all my franchisees with their phone numbers. And somebody had come to me and basically say, well, why would I buy from you? You're just starting up. VIP's got 250 franchisees. And I'd say,
mm.
well, okay, there's some differences, but here's a list of my franchisees. Bring them. Bring them, all of them. Bring as many as you want to. And then go and get their list and bring them, which they wouldn't give them. I knew they wouldn't give them. And they'd ring up, and my guys would simply say, Jim's great. Does what he says he does, really tries hard to find work, always willing to give help and advice. Meetings are very helpful, this kind of stuff. So that's how it works.
Yep. Yep. Well, no wonder it was so successful and still continues to be. Um, there would be many challenges. What are some of the, I guess, like probably more so early days? I know we've had GFC in 2008.
Well, that was good for
Maybe
us.
yeah,
We like financial crisis, Darcy, because on the whole, we find it easier to find clients than good franchisees. So we actually grow
right.
faster in recessions than we do in the good times. Some people bring up and ask me, how's your during the GFC, somebody rang me and said, how's your business been affected? I said, it's about 10% different. They said 10% down. No, 10% up.
10% up.
We grew. Our business is kind of counter
Yeah.
cyclical. When the economy is good, people say, "Oh, I've got jobs, so I don't need to buy a franchise." But when it goes down a bit, well, then they say, "Well, yeah, it's not looking up so much in my field. What about having my own business?" So we quite like recessions. Mind you, hang
I
on a bit.
do.
I don't say I want recessions. I wouldn't vote. If I did, I'd vote for Greens because they're going to tank the economy in no time.
I
We're
will. I
not,
will.
we're not afraid of recessions, put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's. Well, I think that I guess leaning back into the boring business side of things is another reason why I have a strong interest in it because um, given the world that we're in today with AI and so much technology around and being so reliant on that, the essential services or the boring businesses are generally the ones that are essential or things that need to actually continue to happen. And there seems to be a lot of people flowing out or have flowed out in recent years. So there's just such a demand there.
Yeah, there is too. There's always people will always. We're not afraid of AI, are they? If you look at AI and everybody afraid of losing their jobs, the last thing they're ever going to replace is a lawn mowing contractor or a cleaner because it's too difficult. It's not just the cleaning, it's the arrival there and the negotiating with clients and the security and everything else that's involved with it. You can automate a factory, you can automate a back office to a large extent, but automating what we do are being until you get to the stage of having completely humanoid robots. And in that case, we're all completely stuffed. So
Exactly.
there's no jobs left.
I think the service physical service businesses will be the last thing to be
Yeah.
replaced as opposed to everything else. Um, when you're like I looked at the number of services that you have. There were maybe not quite 100, but getting close towards that.
No, I think it's about 50 actually.
50, yeah. How do you manage do you have skin in the not do you like know the services really well, or how do you get professions into each of those different
Oh,
fields? Because there was quite a range there.
I absolutely do not know them. Our speciality is understanding franchising, franchisee support, customer service,
Right.
IT systems, contracts, all that sort of stuff. We're very good at that kind of thing. When you ask me about plumbing, listen, if you've got a plumbing emergency and you try and call on me, you're in big trouble. I don't know a thing about it. Same thing with most of the stuff that we do. I'm a
Yeah.
fairly competent lawn mowing contractor. Even then, I'm not particularly knowledgeable about plants and stuff. I can mow a lawn, I can dig a garden, I could basically prune a fruit tree. Honestly, I don't know much myself about anything. I'm not handy. So that's not my specialty. That's not what we try and do. We actually find it better to have people who are specialists in these areas, who understand that industry, who are
Yeah.
doing it themselves. That's the fun part.
Yeah. Yeah. The benefits of small business ownership. With the owner operators, well, I guess we'll dive into it a little bit, but why do they or why do you believe they provide a better service than the employees?
Well, you get a better class of person. If I'm
Yeah.
going to employ somebody, they're going to get half the turnover, roughly speaking, or whatever you charge. Um, if you're talking about independent operator, they're getting 94% on average. Some of them a lot less. If you're turning over $1 million a year, you're only paying me a fraction of a percent because the fees don't go
Mm,
up that way.
yeah.
So you get better people and they're better motivated. Look, when I had subcontractors, I had a terrible system. My customer service was awful. I would get like for every 100 leads, I would get 100 complaints. It was bad. They just didn't turn up, didn't do this. It was bad. All I had to do is to hold the business together so I could sell them, and then somebody took it over. Now, when I started measuring complaints properly a few years into the franchise, the complaint rate had dropped by 95%. So for every 100 leads, we're getting about 5 complaints. And then we started putting in systems like recording complaints and doing surveys and stuff. The actual complaint rate now would be less than 1%. And we've got some changes taking place in the next 6 months. It's going to drop that by at least half, in my estimation. So we've got more
Yeah.
than a 99% reduction in the level of complaints from pre-franchise days, because you get better people with better systems, with better training. We give them, 2-3 days training up front on things like customer service and looking after customers and using the system and stuff. And it's pretty heavy indoctrination. And I actually myself get up and give 2 talks, a lot about
Yeah.
customer service to franchisees, making more money. So it's very, very intensive what we do. We focus on helping people. That's our speciality. We help people to get into business for themselves. And being in business for yourself is a really good thing if you can manage it. It's not for everybody. Some people should never be in business for themselves. But it's interesting if you have a look at people's income. Now, one of the things you'll often hear about is that people who've got a university degree make more money than those who don't. Well, that's generally true, but it ignores certain sorts of things. First of all, it matters very much what kind of degree. If you're going for something like medicine or dentistry or law or engineering, you'll probably make pretty good money. Ordinary university graduates don't make all that much money. In fact, if you go into a trade, though, into plumbing or electrical, you'll actually tend to make as much money as most university graduates. But if you look at the figures, what really matters is not so much the area you go into, unless it's something really high-paid like medicine. It's whether you own your own business. So if you're a say a gardener and you go and work for somebody else, you're not making a lot of money. But if you go into business for yourself, you're making very good money. Then you're making, in general, in our terms, above average Australian income. That's the difference. And that applies to anything you go into. The biggest gap is not between the people who do white collar and blue collar jobs. It's between people who have their own business and those who work for somebody else. And you can have a degree, but you're still not necessarily making a lot of money if you're working for somebody else. Most of them don't.
I do wonder if someone does an electrical trade, building trade, etc., and then there's unskilled, I guess people who are unskilled, just working general workforce, would they then probably get grouped together into the same non-degree? Like if someone is just, so maybe works at a local supermarket or something like that, they get lumped with the electrician, and so they're
No, that's
averaging
different. Electrician will make a lot
again.
more.
Oh, of course, I just mean they would get compared to a university degree would get a university degree income would get compared to maybe someone who is working in a supermarket or
yes, if you're
who
talking
might be
about
on
a
a lesser
typical
income.
graduate, not a
Yeah,
specialist, I guess against somebody working in a supermarket, absolutely, they're going to make more money. But the
yeah,
other thing to bear in mind too is that the kind of person that goes in for a university degree is probably a little bit more hardworking and smart and enterprising than the typical person who goes out and works for Woolworths when they leave school. And I'm
yeah.
not decrying them. It's the people who
No,
start,
no,
but that's just the reality of it. You can't say that exactly the same people. A lot
no.
of people who try to go to university, they haven't got a very good ATAR, they fail, they drop out after 2 years, they've got a very heavy debt, and then they go and work for Woolworths, they're worse off. So it depends on the caliber of the person to a large extent. But yes,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
will make more as a graduate, but if you allow for who is doing it and their level of ability and their work ethic and so forth, it's not a great difference.
yes,
Because most university graduates don't even work in the field they were trained in. Now, the people who study things like psychology and sociology and history and stuff, like I studied history, um, very, very few of them will do any work that's got value added to what they studied at university.
Mm. That is interesting, and I agree. Unless it's a real specialty like doctor, nurse, law, as
Yes.
you said, yeah. Outside of that, they generally land elsewhere. You did mention so the training that you deliver to the franchises. So you run your I guess you really seem to be present in the business in terms of on the social media. You're obviously a part of the daily training. You seem I guess really accessible,
Yes.
which could is probably the reason behind the success of Jim's group. But why is that, or is that? I guess it's just in your nature, in your DNA to do so.
Well, no, it's a business strategy. Look, there's 2 elements to this. First of all, there's my public persona. the people heard about me. I get recognized when they go out. We went to dinner last night, and people knew who I was. They said, "Hi, Jim." I said, "Oh." So they know me. So this business
Yeah.
of being very active on social media is very helpful for the brand. We get a lot of questions about fees and stuff, and I'm always talking about this. And so that's tremendously beneficial. But the other side of it is that I give my phone number and my email address to all of my franchisees. And I say to them, ring me, contact me, email me anytime. And I hit it again and again during training, and I try and greet them during training so they know me. And they contact me, and I would get multiple franchisees a day contacting me about something. And that is very, very valuable, more than you could possibly imagine. Even though there's nearly 6,000 of them, the biggest problem I have is that not enough of them do contact me. So, for example, just today, I had two franchisees approaching me. I sent them out a letter after 1 month, and how are you going? And ask about pay for work guarantee. And I had a few responses today, but two of them came back. They had problems with income. They're not making enough money. So I really went into the business of pay for work guarantee. And I said, okay, this is how you do it. Here's how you start. Here's some videos you should watch. Here's a list of all the franchises from other divisions in your area that you can approach and offer freebies to. Here's the local franchisors. You can go and attend meetings, so you make contacts with them. I sometimes give them lists of unserviced leads from other divisions. I do all kinds of things. And I say, I challenge you to do this. I want to make sure you make at least $2,500 a week from now on. You don't need to ask permission. Let me know if you've got any problems, okay? That's 2 emails today that went out, together with attachments, all the stuff I sent to them. That's very typical of the thing I do every day. And that's really helpful. First of all, because I can help somebody who's got a problem, make sure they're being looked after probably by their franchisor. I might give the franchisor a kick up the backside and say, you need to advertise more. That's not enough leads coming through. What are you doing?
Yeah.
How can you improve it? But the other thing too is that kind of contact tells me about anything that's going wrong. So if there's something in the system, I'll give you an example. This happened last week. We've got a pay for work guarantee system for mowing that says we'll give you $80 if you go and mow somebody's lawn. Now, the thing is, the contract that this guy had has $65. So it hasn't been updated. And what he said to me is that it's very difficult to make the $2,500 I'm supposed to get doing $65 jobs. And I said, you're completely right. That figure has not been upgraded. So I got in touch with the franchisor and I said, would you raise that guarantee to 80? And I went to documents and said, from now on for mowing, that figure is $80, not 65, because 65 hadn't been upgraded. It should have been, but it wasn't. Do you get the idea? So I found out
100%.
because the franchisee complained to me
Yeah.
that it wasn't working properly. So then I could go to the franchisor and the system and say, okay, change this, because it ought to be possible for anybody to make that income $2,500. And we hadn't set it up right. So it's good for people to contact me. I want to know these things. And it doesn't take me that long. That conversation might only have been, 3 or 4 minutes on an email exchange.
Yeah.
But it could be the difference in that guy succeeding and failing.
It certainly is a good way to keep the finger on the pulse of what the issues and whatnot the franchisees are having. It's quite unique too, though, that someone would with 6,000 or almost 6,000 businesses out there that you're accessible to them, and I guess such a small number contacting you, even though you do want more, it's probably a testament to the actual systems that are in place at the moment.
I have pretty good franchisors too. This is, bear in mind, I don't do most of this. Most of them, that's what they do. We've got 200 odd franchisors who provide support. They answer queries. They ring the franchise regularly. They've got to ring them at least once a month, ideally weekly. They run regular meetings. And most of them are really, really good people. So they provide very intense, ongoing, regular care. So I can rely on them. One of the reasons too, if there's anything going wrong, like, for example, if you have a franchisor who's not acting particularly well, who's not being pleasant, say being a bit dictatorial, I find out about it and then I can try and do something about that. We have a system where franchises can vote out their franchisors or change to a different region. It's very franchisee focused. And that normally starts with me. Because somebody says franchisors acting in this way. And I said, what do the other franchisees think? And he says, well, they're saying similar things. Okay, we'll get a few of them to write to me, email me, and I'll set up a referendum. and they'll put some pressure on this guy either to improve or to go. So it's a very intensive way of making sure that everything's working well. I also have a big
Yeah.
role in complaints too. If I'm the only one that can delete an unfair complaint, which I do multiple times a day, and that's also a way of watching and making sure that the system's working properly. So I'm kind of very
Yeah.
grassroots. But,
Yeah.
but one of the things, Darcy, you've got to bear in mind is one of the reasons I can do this is because I'm not particularly competent at doing anything in particular. I mean, I'm not very good at IT. I certainly don't understand about figures. I've never written a business plan in my life. Most things to do with the business are run by people who are far more capable than me. So there's only one or two things that I can do that are, as good as anybody else. That's what I focus on.
Yeah. Just to clarify, so the franchisors will own a region, or
Yeah,
and then there's
most of the own it. Yeah.
gotcha. So they would have business. They would have businesses underneath
Yeah, they look
their
after.
intersect. Yeah, understand.
So
Yeah,
underneath
gotcha.
isn't always the way you'd look at it.
Sorry. Yeah.
We say our franchisor should serve the franchisee. The idea is servant leadership. It's like Jesus washing
Yeah.
his disciples' feet. That's the kind of the idea. So in a sense, we're not the bosses. We are the service provider. They're the clients. That's why a
Yes.
franchisee can vote out a franchisor or move
Yeah.
to a different region, because ultimately our job is to make them happy
Yeah.
at every level. My job is to look after my franchisors too, to make them successful, which sometimes means
Yeah.
pushing them a bit too. But
Yeah.
that's our job.
Yeah. That's very interesting. It is. Yeah. I guess as you said, maybe it's one of your best skills, but it is admirable that you're so available and whatnot to all of the franchisees and franchisors. With what other so mowing and cleaning, are they probably the two biggest divisions?
Yeah,
And
they're the biggest. There's a lot of divisions. The serious divisions of those got more than 100 franchisees, like fencing, like
yeah,
test and tag, like building inspections, good one, pool care. There's a number of them. Some of them are fairly small, just starting up, so they're not very big.
yeah, yeah. And what's the process of going into a new service?
What?
You just overlay your like franchisor model to that, is that, and have the professionals.
Okay, well,
So
it just happened that this week on Monday morning, a couple of young ladies came to me who'd done a podcast, just like you, and they want to actually meet me in person. So I said, "Okay, come in and bring your cameraman. That's okay." And they came, and we just got sitting in the office talking. And then they actually we come up with the idea. What you're doing is actually quite franchisable, because they're in the business of business advice. They actually go into a business and they help them to be more efficient. Um,
yep,
and so we were discussing it then. And what about this? So that just came out of it. So actually, they're now booking for the next franchise or training, which is going to take place in August next month, and we'll see how we
well,
go. I've given them
so yeah,
contracts and everything. It's not expensive to get into particularly, but
yeah,
that's quite exciting. That could be a great division in itself. It just
yeah,
happened
100%.
Monday.
And just by chance, by the sounds of it.
Well, yeah, and they didn't come in to talk about a new division. It just came out of the
No,
conversation, as you do when you have a talk with somebody, and they're great. They're a great pair, actually. Very just very fun interview, and
yeah,
good attitude towards business, and they've got a successful business themselves, so they know what they're
yeah,
talking about. And
yeah,
I was talking about all the kinds of benefits too that we could do, and how we could work with other divisions, because we do complementary things like
yeah,
people like bookkeeping and so forth. You can work with them, and we've got IT people, and so it's just something good. But that mainly is the fact that they seem good people. That was the thing that most interested me. They just had a great
yeah,
attitude towards business. They're very dynamic, very likable.
yeah. No, I'll keep a close eye on that for sure. With regards to small businesses, there's been some, I guess, some commentary and whatnot of late about running small businesses in Australia, and um, yeah, I guess some of the taxes and whatnot that are being applied. Is it becoming harder to run, or do you think businesses are able to pivot and obviously just adapt to what's happening?
Well, the government doesn't help.
No.
I often say running a business in Australia, which is really crucial to our success, is about like going to the Olympic team and saying, okay, you're Olympic team, you're going to wear yellow and gold, but when you're going for your sprint, you're going to have a ball and chain around your leg. So that you have to sprint against the best athletes from other countries, but you're going to have this chain and this ball holding you down.
Yeah.
Well, the government bureaucracy is a bit like that. It's just strangling ever rising sea of red tape. And franchising is
Yeah.
bad as anything. It's horrifying, and it's getting worse all the time. But part of our job is to fight with the bureaucracy and try and get people to get around it. And we have good
Yeah.
automated systems and stuff. You have to do this ridiculous disclosure document, which nobody ever reads, but it's all automated and it's online. And oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
My wife's a builder too. She's got the same problem there. And then in tourism and hospitality, the regulations are just absolutely crazy. The government's out there basically saying things like, okay, now we've got a plan. Let's bring in 500,000 new Australians every year. That's good. And now let's actually make some more regulations that are so onerous that you're absolutely forbidden to build enough houses to put them in. What could possibly go wrong? That's what they do. Stupid government.
It is. That's something that rolls me is seeing the reporting of the job numbers increasing and then seeing that the public sector has increased tenfold
Yeah.
whilst the private sector has not, is
That's right.
basically
That's right.
zero
But
or
it's jobs, but it's not productive jobs. If you ran the
no.
country properly, we probably need a third of the number of public servants. First of all, because they're grossly inefficient, and I should know. I worked
Yes.
public service 6 months. But secondly, because so much of what they do is actually negative. It actually
Yeah.
hurts people. Like building regulations is a perfect example. Applying for a building permit to do something take you 6 months. Now people think, oh, that's okay. It's just profits coming out of the building. No, it's not. You push up the price of housing when you do that. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And for what? Like I know in somewhere like say Houston, Texas, they have a system whereby if you don't get your permit through, and they've got virtually no zoning there, in a month you can get a someone like a architect to put it in through for you to approve it. I mean, I don't know. The government works hard to make us poorer. That's all I can say. It drives me mad. Perfect example is the
Yeah.
taxi industry. The government for decades had this system where they control the number of taxis. All right. This is what they did. Great government expense. This is a government working for your benefit. All right. And then companies like Uber and Didi come along and they get around that. Okay. What happens? Three things. First of all, service improves. Secondly, prices go down. Thirdly, the actual drivers get more of the income than they used to. So the government's basically going to all this trouble to make sure we have the worst service at the highest price with the least money going for the people doing the jobs. How is that what we pay our government for? They've done surveys in America, where they license certain kinds of occupation in certain states and others, so you can make a direct comparison. So if you license an occupation, two things happen. First of all, you get worse service, and secondly, you get higher prices. So
Yeah.
that's what the government does when they do these things. Now,
Yeah.
they don't think that way. Obviously, they think, oh, if we license it, we're going to get better service. Well, no, you won't. It's the opposite of what happens. And there's many, many studies that prove this. And yet the
Yeah.
government says, let's just give more and more and more regulations, more and more red tape, and eventually we'll have nirvana. Basically, because 99% of the population is working for the government and the other 1% will somehow trying to keep the whole thing afloat. Anyway, that's me raving about politics, but
No,
still.
well, it does. The part that it's not as it's different for me and you clearly, but the sometimes I put lots of time and effort just to thinking and watching and looking into it, and then I catch myself and think I should just focus on the things that I can really control because it almost feels uncontrollable at times. Now, when you own a big a business like yours, it's probably a little bit different, or definitely is a little bit different, but putting the time towards all of it, and then sometimes you just hear things often and just shake your head and
Yeah.
just wonder what is going on, especially I guess in Melbourne. Melbourne and Victoria seems to be,
Oh, we're the worst. We are the absolute
yeah,
worst in terms of
yeah,
bureaucracy, government debt, inefficiency, feather bedding of
yeah,
unions, overpriced contracts. If you had an Olympic prize for bad government, Victoria would have first
first
place on
price.
the pedestal. Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's sad. With the I wanted to speak about there's so many university degrees around today, and my personal opinion is that there's just so many that are irrelevant, and the service and what kids are taught in school, which then obviously leads them to university. Do you think there's a lack of, I guess, drive or anything for them to go into service-based businesses that because we spoke about earlier, they're considered unsexy potentially, that there might not be an actual demand or drive for them to go there?
Yeah, no, there's a cultural bias against it. As societies become decadent, which are certainly, people are less and less likely to do manual jobs. That's why
Mm.
immigrants tend to do so well, even with poorer English. they, they often they outdo native-born Australians because they don't mind starting with doing the hard work and sometimes the manual jobs. Yeah, so good on them. But as to whether the government has much control of that, I don't know. People just
Yeah.
they just want the sexy jobs. They want to sit in front of a computer with a mouse and do IT type things. It's kind of like where the world's heading to. And I got to say, the government pretty well basically pours all this money into these useless degrees and starves sectors like electrical, plumbing, carpenters, those kinds of things where you can really make a difference to the economy. I mean,
Yes.
we don't need more art historians and sociologists. We need more plumbers and carpenters, and they're just not going into it. If you did
Yeah.
something like subsidize the apprentices, so apprentices could go in and make good money right from the word go instead of such a discount, I think that'd be an awful lot better way to spend your money than into university degrees.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly agree. Uh, so you've been in so 1970, I guess you've been in mowing since 1970. So that's
Well, since
what,
I was
50.
eight, actually, I had a job at
Oh,
gardener when I
true.
was a kid at 8 years old. So
Okay. Well,
I've been doing it for about 65 years, if you think about it that way.
it's pretty much a whole. It's basically since you're able to nearly do anything, you've been in the gardening
Yeah, okay.
industry in some extent. What continues to motivate you in after all these years? You could easily do far less, or do things not associated with it all.
Well, it's great fun. I don't know. Let's just say that I offered you a really fascinating computer game. Lots and lots of levels of endlessly creative. You've got to make progress and learn and do new things. And I'm going to pay you good money to play it. What do you think? How good a deal is that?
Yeah,
This is just super, super fun. It is a really good way of life. My biggest problem is that I miss it too much when I can't do it. So the hardest time for year for me is between Christmas and New Year when everything shuts down. Now I take my family down to the beach. We have a nice holiday together. I've got 10 kids and grandchildren and stuff. We all go down there and have a good time. So that's not too bad. But otherwise, that's a really difficult time for me. It is. I just enjoy work so much.
really.
I'd really like to keep the Sabbath or something like that, but I can't do it. I just have to work every day of the week. And if I'm not doing
Yeah,
business, I'm actually working on some books to do with my research. I'm writing a book about what I call lemming cycles right now, and
yeah.
so it's a fun life. It's just really fun, Darcy. I love it.
I think you often hear of people getting to retirement age or deciding to retire, and then they're really just losing their purpose, and then it just things tend to maybe not go so well. But staying involved is
It's the best. Hey,
certainly seems to
listen,
be the
if I wanted
key.
to get a job, I'm going to apply for a job at the age of 74. They say, go away, you old codger. You're a has been. We don't want you. Get lost. Now, nobody's going to fire me because I own the business. So,
You've got it all under control then.
yeah, well, I'm sackable.
What would your franchisors say about Jim Penman?
Well, it depends who you ask. They don't always like me a lot because sometimes can be very hard on people if they don't look after customers well. I try and be
Yeah,
nice about it, but I do push them pretty hard. And the same thing if
yeah,
you're a franchisor not looking after your franchisees. Um, and there's complaints about things like our lead fee system. You pay for every lead that you get, minus
yeah,
15%. Some don't want to pay for leads that don't turn out, this kind of stuff. So I have objections, but generally speaking, I think people would be very concerned if I wasn't around because I do protect them. They know that, and they understand my role as making sure that things are working well. So one of the things I actually say in training is, listen, I'm 74 years old, but I've got perfect health. I'm probably going to live 20 years. I'm going to be around, and that sort of gets a round of applause because it's comfort to them. I've even set up a system in my contract that clause that says that the majority controlling share of Jim's Group cannot be sold without the written consent of a majority of franchisees. Now, my CFO at the time said that's a very strange thing to put in your contract because it's going to dramatically reduce the value of your business because you really can't sell it. And I said, well, good. That's the point of it because I do not want someone to come along when I'm no longer going to protect my franchisees, buy out the business and rip them off the way that people like 7-Eleven and those kind of vulture franchisors do. So I'm not really particularly aimed at money, even though I'm obviously pretty rich by most people's standards.
Yeah.
It's not one of my major aims. It hardly comes in the top 10. I just want to be able to fund my research.
Yeah.
But I don't live off very much. So I'm kind of I think most of them would see me as being someone valuable.
Yeah. I do applaud you for obviously staying private. I have no doubt that it could have gone public if and still could if you
Oh,
ever wanted.
people
But
would want to buy in for sure, but I wouldn't like shareholders because they're going to want to say, get your share price up. But what that
exactly.
means, what you've got to do is then you've got to take more money from. Look, I could go to my franchisees. I could change the contract, and I could put a different clause in the contract that gave me an extra, say, $100 a month per franchisee. That works for the system. I get an extra $5 million per annum. It's easy. I
Yeah.
could do it, but why would I? I don't
Yeah.
care that money that much, and why would I want to charge my franchisees an extra $20 a week just to fatten my bottom line, which is pretty good anyway? That's
Yeah.
kind of the way I see it. It'd be easy for somebody who didn't have that attitude to come in and basically make a lot more money. And I'm just setting something up with a family trust arrangement with my franchisees being able to elect a board member to try and protect them after I'm no longer around to look after them. I'll do my best. I can't rule from beyond the
Yeah.
grave. Though there is a digital
Yeah.
version of me, which you can look at jimpenman.com.au. There's a digital me that can actually answer questions just as I would. All of my word goes into it. So if you want advice, so the idea by the time I'm ready to go, the digital Jim is ready to take over the company. But that probably won't work. But still, we can try.
Hopefully being able to pass on all your knowledge, or hope it doesn't go rogue as well.
Well, people often ask me, they want me to act as a mentor to them. And I say, well, if you're not a franchisee, I can't. It's not my job.
Yeah.
But you got digital Jim and you'll get the same question. And you can talk to digital Jim for hours and you'll get the right answers.
I like that. I think that's probably the way a lot of things will go with digital copies of people.
Yeah, why not? It's actually very good, actually. You should have a look at it sometime, Darcy.
I shall.
I've tried it myself several times, and it basically it even gives things like marriage advice, which I don't even know where that comes from. But pretty much what I would say. I mean, I've been divorced 3 times, so I know all about what not to do in a marriage. So I can give advice from that point of view. But it does give pretty good advice.
So they've trained that from obviously years and years of your input, and
this talk we're doing now, you'll send us a link to it, and we'll put that in too.
Okay, nice. Yep. No, that's great. Back on the public thing, I guess the other key part is the bureaucracy and having to answer to the shareholders is probably the two, like you've got complete control. The decisions are made quickly. You don't have to go through a board or anything like that. It's just you make a decision, you make it happen.
Come up with an new idea. I'll have a chat to it. So come to my senior people, and we can make a decision within half an hour. It's very, very quick.
Yeah. I think that's great. That would certainly be part of the success, and then the franchisees are not at the whim of the shareholders.
Yeah, big companies don't do what we do very well. And many years ago, Yates Garden Supplies decided to launch a franchise in competition with us, thinking, hey, we know garden products and stuff. They they failed so badly, they actually tanked their share price to a certain extent. They just don't know how to
Wow.
do it. Now, I don't know
Yeah.
anything much about garden products, but I understand franchising very well.
Yeah. I won't. I've got one final question. Again, thank you very much for your time. We're in the night time in the PMs. This is just a. What is the most underrated, boring business in Australia, do you think?
Well, I'm biased, but some services.
Yeah.
It's basically it's such a good business. You can get into for almost nothing. Now, there's different ways to do it. Try and start full time from scratch is very difficult, as I said. But start part time like I did, or buy a franchise. Um, very little capital. You'll pay it back within, a couple of months, 2, 3 months. So
Yeah.
very little investment, and completely no upper limit. There's nothing to stop you. We've got franchisees, our typical franchises that turns over about 150,000 a year, but we've got people turning over in the millions. And some of them
Yeah.
have become franchisors. We've probably created more millionaires than any company in the history of Australia because you
Mm.
don't have it. Like you have give me an example. You got a young guy, Dan Cale. Now he was a high school dropout, went to work for McDonald's. In his early 20s, with great trepidation, he invested, I wanted 25, $30,000 buying a mowing franchise. He became a very successful franchisee, employed about 6 people. His business was turning over close to $1 million a year, had a 5.0 perfect rating. Then he came to me and said, Jim, I'd like to become a franchisor. So I don't have enough money, but said, okay, I'll help you into that. So he bought out what's called the Brisbane region. Now, this young guy, still in his early 30s, very early 30s, is now running Jim's mowing in Australia and New Zealand. And I'm hoping he's going to take over North America someday. And he's got a nice picture of his house, which is a multi-million-dollar house on the foreshore of things. This is a high school dropout who invested like $25,000 into a business a few years back. Where could you do that? How could
Yeah.
you do it in any other area of life? So what a phenomenal opportunity. And he's just starting. I can't imagine by the time he's my age, he's going to,
Yeah.
poor old poverty-stricken Jim. I have no idea where he's going to get to. Just like a lot
Sorry,
of
one more
cases.
question.
Yeah, like a guy.
That is an
Yeah.
amazing story.
No, just another guy who's comes to me, Haydar. He's a lovely bloke. He was a cleaner. Now he used to work in a bank, decided he liked cleaning the bank more than he liked um, being a banker. So he took on the cleaning contract. So this is better. So then he came to us. So he had a cleaning business. We didn't work all that well. He came to us. He's now running the entire cleaning divisions throughout Australia and New Zealand with his partner, who's his brother-in-law. And he's got nearly 2,000 franchises. He also looks after contracts. I mean, he's this is a guy who's cleaning. He was cleaning. He was pushing a squeegee around. He was cleaning toilets.
Uh,
That was his job when he came to us. I mean,
wow.
how could you jump like that in just a few years?
That's two amazing stories to come from where they've came from
Yeah,
to where they are now.
because basically money isn't the point. Education isn't the
No.
point. It's just all character. I mean, these are
Yeah.
amazing people. They are amazing people, and there's so many wonderful people in gyms who can do this. You have to have the character. But
Yeah.
there's nothing that stops you. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have money. You just have to have the right attitude to what you're doing. And we can help you develop that.
Yeah. You're going to put the systems around them. I think, especially with the
Yeah.
AI, really character, good people is
Yes.
going to be the currency. Given that so many other things can be automated, but just being good people, good person is going to be
Can't,
a
can't get
real,
beyond that. Yes. And that's not going to be
yeah.
that's going to be not needed for the good people isn't going to run out. We haven't got nearly
No.
enough of them.
Yes. Oh, that's certainly the truth. Well, that's all I've got for you. I am extremely appreciative for you jumping on. Yeah, thank you very much. Being extremely insightful. So, yeah, we'll post it up on YouTube, and yeah, thank you again, Jim.
Oh, thanks, Darcy. Yeah, send us the link and we'll